motor back from the machine shop. We're going to take it in the shop. We're going to go ahead and start putting this thing together. There's still a lot of stuff to do to this thing, but it looks pretty good. We're going to get it in there, put it on the floor, put it in a stand so we can start working on it, and see what we got. This is kind of an important piece right here because most of your 12 valve Cummins diesels, whenever they're leaking oil, it's because the gasket that's on this is usually rotted out and it leaks out of this tappet cover. And they're a pain in the ass to change. So this is the easiest way to do it when it's off. But anyway, we're gonna try to get this on there without too much trouble here. To these. So this is your tappet cover. So basically what happens here is your camshaft runs right down in here. Right under here is where your camshaft runs. And it pushes the lifters up, which push the push rods. And your push rods run your rockers, okay? So it's kind of a very important piece to make sure that you get sealed right, because if you don't, there's a ton of oil that runs in here. And if it's not sealed up right, you're gonna leak oil everywhere. So, you know, usually these take like a rubber gasket. This is a custom tappet cover from Industrial Injection. So it's a little bit of a different setup. This one requires only ultra black or gray. So you don't really have to worry about a gasket. But on the regular 12 valve, on a regular 12 valve or whatever you're doing on a Cummins, there is a rubber gasket that goes around a piece of tin and it usually rots out, or you know, if you don't put it in right, it'll leak. Believe me, I know, because I've done it before. All right, here's a set of custom injectors. When we were tearing this motor down, the guys from Dynamic Diesel actually seen us tearing the motor down and asked if they could build a set of injectors for it. I said, sure, why not? Anyway, as you can see in here, they put our name in it. WelderUp, it's kind of cool. So anyway, we're gonna throw these in there. I'm just gonna kind of set them in the hole right now, just so that way we're not getting a bunch of dirt inside the injector hole. Shit? Oh, we don't need that. Sometimes with these injectors, if they show up, they usually have a little grease on them to hold the copper gasket on there. But you might want to throw a little extra grease on there, because if you put these in there and they go in sideways, they could cause a major problem. So I just put a little grease on there like that. Boom, sticks it. Okay, then it don't fall in there sideways, because I've had them do it before. A lot of guys don't even run the washer in there, but This one I'm going to. So make sure when you put those in, you just put a little grease on that copper, especially on some of these custom ones. They're pretty good about it though. This one here, you could tell has a little grease on it, but just for safety, put a little on there. Okay, so we got the tappet cover put on today. We also got the injectors dropped into it. The next move is I'm gonna pull this front cover off and we're gonna TIG weld the gear onto the crankshaft so it doesn't slip. A lot of times what happens is on these high horsepower motors with a lot of RPM and tons of torque, the gear will shear the pin off, and I'll show you guys that when we get this cover off. So we're gonna TIG weld that on and make sure it's all good to go. That'll be the next step. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. Before we get too excited and put this motor back together, I had to pull the front cover back off, which became a nightmare. Just for those of you that are always looking for performance and cool stuff, this is a cover that came from industrial injection. These bolts are stainless steel. Problem is, if you over torque them putting in, they strip really easy. So every one of these, I had to weld a bolt onto it to get them to back out. It's a pain in the butt. Anyway, so be careful with that. Don't over torque those if you ever put them in. Okay, let's talk about this gear that's on the end of your crankshaft. Okay, this gear right here runs your oil pump, it runs your camshaft, and it also runs your injection pump gear. So what happens is you got this one, that one, and this one all on that gear, which is a lot of pressure, right? But when you start revving these things up around 5,000 to 6,000 RPM, there's a good chance that this little, your little keeper right here is gonna shear off. So if you look right here, real close, you can see your little keyway right here. What happens is it shears it off and this spins and throws everything off. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a TIG welder and I'm gonna TIG weld some little 1/2-inch welds here, here, and probably there. And that'll reassure me that that's not gonna slip and come apart. You know, when you're running it off the trans brake or putting a lot of pressure on a lot of RPM, there's a good chance that that thing right there can strip off and then you got a major catastrophe. Okay, so if you're gonna weld these things together in your shop or whatever, I highly recommend a TIG welder. Don't use a MIG welder and don't use a stick welder because you don't wanna get a bunch of stuff all down inside of here. The little dingleberries that come off everything, it's gonna splatter and it's gonna get inside your motor and you don't want that. So make sure that if you're gonna do it, use a TIG welder. That's my recommendation. All right, let's weld it up. So a lot of guys are like 1 inch, 2 inch. What I did is I did about a 1/2 inch on each side, and on the very bottom I did about a 1 inch weld. You can kind of fusion weld it back together. I used a little filler rod on this one, but it doesn't need a lot. It's just gonna hold it together and keep that from shearing off. So this is done. We're gonna put the front cover back on this thing and start assembling, start putting things together finally. So here we go.